All right, today we're heading to the teardrop island of Sri Lanka. Now, this place is absolutely teeming with wildlife. But among all that incredible biodiversity, there's one animal that stands alone, right at the very top of the food chain. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into. People call it a ghost of the forest, a powerhouse of muscle and stealth. And really, it is the undisputed king of this entire island ecosystem. We are, of course, talking about the magnificent Sri Lankan leopard. So you might be asking, what makes this leopard so special? Well, its whole story is about isolation and evolution. Think about it. Being the top dog, or, top cat, for thousands of years, that's going to shape you into something completely unique. Okay, let's get a little formal for a second. The scientific name is Panthera pardus kotiya. That last part, kotiya, that's the name you really want to remember because this subspecies is found absolutely nowhere else on Earth. It was first officially described way back in 1956, and yeah, it is a true Sri Lankan original. So why is this leopard so big? It's a fantastic question, and the answer is just a classic example of evolution at work, something scientists call island gigantism. See, unlike its cousins over in Africa or mainland Asia, who have to worry about lions and tigers, the Sri Lankan leopard has, well, no rivals. None. It's the apex predator, period. So over time, evolution just naturally favored a bigger, stronger cat. And the result of all that? Well, just look at this number. The largest males can tip the scales at a massive 77 kilograms. That's 170 pounds. We are talking about a seriously powerful animal, a true testament to its status as king of the island. Okay, so we know it's big, but let's dive into the life of this solitary hunter, because its story is all about incredible adaptability and just lethal efficiency. And when we talk about adaptability, just look at this range. From the super dry, arid lowlands to the lush, misty central hills. And get this, even into places humans have changed, like tea estates and home gardens. The Sri Lankan leopard doesn't just survive in these places. It is actually adapted to thrive in pretty much every habitat the island can throw at it. So how does an apex predator like this actually hunt? Well, it's pure feline perfection. It all starts with a silent, incredibly patient stalk, getting impossibly close to its target, and then, bam, an explosive burst of speed closes the gap in an instant. The whole thing ends swiftly, decisively, with one single, powerful bite to the throat. All right, so what's on the menu for a king? It turns out they're pretty pragmatic hunters. Their absolute favorite meal, especially in the dry zones, is the axis deer. But hey, a leopard's gotta eat, right? So it won't pass up an opportunity. Somber deer, wild boar, monkeys, even birds or reptiles. Basically, if it's available, it's on the table. But this is where the story of this incredible predator starts to take a really dark turn. Because for all of its power, for all of its adaptability, the leopard now faces a threat it just can't outmaneuver. And that threat is us. The IUCN Red List, that's the official authority on this stuff, has now classified the Sri Lankan leopard as vulnerable. And you have to understand, that isn't just a label. It's a huge, flashing red light, a stark warning. And here's the number that really drives that warning home. It's estimated that there are fewer than 800 mature leopards left in the wild. Let that sink in for a second. Less than 800. That's the entire global population for this unique subspecies. It's a shockingly small number. And what's so tragic is that this tiny population isn't stable. It's actively declining because of human actions. Just look at this. Since 2010, we have confirmed records of over 90 leopards being killed by people. And you just know the real number is probably much, much higher than that. So, why? Why is this happening? Well, it really boils down to three main threats. First, habitat loss. As human populations expand, their forests just keep shrinking. Second, these brutal wire snares. Now, they're usually set for other animals, like wild boar, but leopards get caught in them by accident. And third, you have direct human conflict, often retaliation killings after a leopard attacks livestock. This right here, this is a story that just puts a face to the whole tragedy. Back in 2019, the conservation world was absolutely buzzing. They'd captured the first ever footage of a rare black leopard. I mean, what an incredible discovery. But then, less than a year later, that same magnificent animal was found, trapped and horribly injured in a wire snare. And despite everyone's desperate efforts to save it, it died. A symbol of hope had become a symbol of the entire crisis. But the story is not over. Not yet. Because in the face of all these threats, there is a dedicated group of people who are fighting back. They are literally racing against time to secure a future for the island's king. So, who's in this fight? Well, it's a real coordinated effort. You have organizations like the Leopard Project, which is part of the Wilderness and Wildlife Conservation Trust, and they're working side by side with the Sri Lankan government. They're using everything they've got, GPS collars, camera traps, to really understand what these leopards need to survive, especially in the Central Hills, where their habitat is just fragmenting so rapidly. And look, there's also a crucial backup plan in place. A global breeding program in zoos around the world is maintaining a small but genetically vital captive population. Back in 2011, there were about 75 of them. Think of it as a living insurance policy, a last line of defense against them disappearing from the wild forever. And all of this, really, brings us to the final, most critical question. The future of this magnificent predator doesn't just hang on conservation projects or zoos. It really depends on answering this one question. As their island home continues to shrink, can humans and leopards finally learn to coexist? The answer to that? Well, that's what will ultimately decide their fate.
All right, today we're diving into the world of one of the planet's most incredible and honestly elusive big cats, the Sri Lankan leopard. This is a story about power, about being at the very top, but it's also a story of vulnerability and a desperate fight for survival, all happening on one single island. And let's just start with the number that really says it all. 800. That's it. Fewer than 800 mature Sri Lankan leopards are estimated to be left in the wild. Right off the bat, that number tells you this amazing animal is really living on the edge. And here's its official status. It's listed as vulnerable. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, it means it's facing a high risk of extinction out there in the wild. And maybe even more worrying, the population trend is likely still pointing down. So the clock is ticking. So who exactly is this animal? Let's get properly introduced to the undisputed king of Sri Lanka's wilderness. Okay, the scientific name is Panthera pardus kotiya, but the two most important words on this slide, native exclusively. This leopard is what we call endemic to Sri Lanka. You can't find it anywhere else on Earth. It's a unique piece of the island's natural history, only officially recognized as its own subspecies back in 1956. Now check this out. The size difference between males and females is, well, it's huge. A male is nearly double the weight of a female. And you know, this subspecies has probably evolved to be bigger than a lot of its mainland cousins for one very simple, very cool reason, which we are gonna get to in just a second. So how does being the biggest and baddest predator on the block actually change your day-to-day life? Let's take a look at how this leopard totally owns its ecosystem. You know, if you've ever watched a nature documentary about leopards in Africa, you've probably seen them dragging a kill way up into a tree, and they do that to keep it safe from lions or hyenas. But the Sri Lankan leopard, yeah, it hardly ever does that. And that just begs the question, right? Why wouldn't it? Why go through all the trouble of a hunt just to leave your dinner out in the open? And boom, there's your answer. It's the apex predator. On the island of Sri Lanka, there are no tigers, no lions, no other big carnivores to challenge it. It's at the absolute top of the food chain. There's nobody around to steal its lunch, so why waste the energy? It's just a fantastic example of how an animal's environment shapes its behavior. And as the top predator, it's not a picky eater. I mean, sure, it loves axis deer in the dry zones, but it's a super practical hunter. It'll take on anything from a big, powerful wild boar to a quick little monkey. That kind of adaptability is exactly how it's managed to thrive all across the island's different habitats. But that reign at the top is in serious trouble. There's a growing conflict with humans, and it's putting the leopard's entire future at risk. And the tough part is, these threats, they're pretty much all caused by us. As Sri Lanka's population grows, the leopard's home is shrinking, getting broken up into little pieces. They get caught by accident in these awful wire snares that are meant for other animals. And of course, when a leopard attacks livestock, it often ends up being killed in retaliation. And this just drives the point home. Since 2010, we know of at least 90 leopards that have been killed by people. That's just the documented number. You have to assume the real figure is probably a lot higher. So, to make this threat feel a little less like just a number, let's talk about one specific leopard. Back in 2019, conservationists were absolutely thrilled when they got the first ever video of a rare black leopard in Sri Lanka. It was a huge deal, a beautiful symbol of the wild mysteries still hiding in the island's forests. And this is where the story becomes just heartbreaking. Just months after this leopard became a global symbol of hope, that exact same animal was found trapped in a wire snare. It was rescued, but the injuries were too severe, and it died. The story of this one animal just perfectly captures the whole struggle. This rare, beautiful creature, celebrated 1 minute, and then killed by a human-made threat the next. But the story doesn't end there. It can't. So let's shift our focus to the people who are fighting to make sure that leopard's death wasn't for nothing. You know, this fight is not a new thing. Just look at this incredible photo from 1958 that's just 2 years after the subspecies was even identified. It shows a park ranger with a rescued cub. It's such a powerful reminder that the effort to protect these animals has a really long and proud history in Sri Lanka. And today, that legacy is being carried on by some amazing groups, like the Wilderness and Wildlife Conservation Trust, or WWCT. Their leopard project is right on the front lines. They're doing the hard research to understand how these leopards live and move. They're working with the government, and they're focusing their efforts exactly where the problem is worst, where habitats are disappearing the fastest. Let's just look at the numbers one last time, because this really puts it all into perspective. The number of these leopards in zoos around the world is tiny, just 75 back in 2011. This is not a species that can be saved in captivity. That wild population, even though it's small, is absolutely everything. Protecting them right there in their home is the only way forward. And that really leaves us with this final, really important question. The story of the Sri Lankan leopard is a small version of a huge global challenge. As our world keeps expanding, how do we make space for the wild? Who's responsible for making sure that a magnificent predator like this doesn't just survive, but actually has a chance to thrive?